To follow the breaking news of the deadly shooting at a church in Minneapolis where 2 children were killed and six more children are in critical condition, along with others who were injured in this shooting. But we now have an identification on the shooter. Let me bring in MSNBC's Mark Santia along with Christopher O'Leary, a former FBI counterterrorism official. All we knew up until this point, Mark, the brief description we got at the press conference was early 20s, wearing black clothing, cargo-like pants, but now we know who this person is.
You're right, Chris. And according to multiple senior law enforcement officials briefed on this matter, they say federal law enforcement has identified the Minneapolis church shooter as Robin Westman. Now, police have said publicly that Robin Westman is in their 20s with a limited criminal history. NBC News has confirmed with those same law enforcement officials that the suspect left behind videos that were posted online. There were writings that referenced suicide, as well as extremely violent thoughts and ideas. There was an apology to their family and a handwritten sketch of the interior layout of a church. Now, Chris, it's not clear or confirmed if that sketch, that individual sketch, is the church where the shooter eventually opened fire, but that's what we know right now. So Robin Westman has been identified by federal law enforcement as the shooter.
It's August 27, 2025. School children across this country started school this week, and today we have a tragedy. And that tragedy is a mass shooting at a Christian school and church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm never really at a loss for words, but I am here, and I'm going to tell you what's on my mind. You heard what that news clip just said, and what bothered me is those 2 gentlemen, when they started speaking of the shooter, they said the shooter's name was Robin Westman. And I have to correct them because the shooter's real name is Robert Westman. Westman is a transgender woman. Westman petitioned the court in Minnesota to change the name, not their name, and they were granted permission. Why don't Democrat politicians talk about this? Why don't mainstream news media talk about this? The person had a mental illness, whether it's transgenderism or they were just nutty enough to get weapons, more than one, and go to a Christian school and church and commit such a horrific crime. It continues to happen every single year. How many mass shootings have we seen where the shooter happened to be transgender? There are several, namely the one in Nashville, Tennessee. And the shooter in Nashville had a manifesto, which to this day, I have never seen it. And the shooter in Minnesota had a manifesto and a lot of videos of all the weaponry that that person had. And there were writings on the magazines for the weapons. And one of the writings said, "Unalive President Trump." So what does that tell you? Was this person a MAGA supporter? No, this person was a liberal, was against whatever they were against, mainly because it's Minnesota and Tim Walz is the governor. People there really don't know what to do. All we do know is Minnesota is a transgender refuge, and Tim Walz signed that into law not long ago. But people, or groups I should say, have petitioned the governor's office for help with funding to secure schools and churches. And all those requests fell on deaf ears.
Now, you know I'm not a fan of Tim Walz. I think he's a joke. I think he's a clown. And no, I do not blame him for this shooting. But what I will say is what I'm showing you right here. 2 years before a shooter opened fire on students attending Mass in Minneapolis, the leaders of independent and Catholic schools in Minnesota begged Tim Walz for help securing their schools. The funding was never authorized. Their letter asking Walz to help secure non-public and religious schools came 1 week after a trans-identifying shooter killed 3 children and 3 adults in Nashville at a Christian Covenant school. And then in 2023, the same month the letter was sent, Walz signed legislation establishing Minnesota as a trans refuge. Yes, typical Democrat politics. We support you, but we really don't. But if we say we support you, we'll get your votes, promising to protect those seeking gender affirming care. And it also should be noted that Mr. or Miss Robin, Robert, whatever this person called themselves, petitioned the court in 2020 to legally change the name from Robert to Robin. So this was a man thinking he was a woman, and of course, Minnesota went along with it. This is just one of many shootings involving a transgender person. But the Democrats of today don't seem to have any problem with it. And I think it's a big problem.
We are getting more information into the Fox 9 newsroom now about the suspect, Robin Westman, 23 years old.
Yeah, we told you earlier that his mother had retired from Annunciation Catholic Church just a few years ago. We've also learned in our newsroom just a little while ago that the suspect, Robin Westman, did petition for a name change in Dakota County in 2019 to go from Robert to Robin. And in the court filings, it says that Westman identified as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification.
And that's why I always say, when it comes to this topic, the Democrat politicians should be ashamed of themselves. Because I know, as well as you watching this right now, that they do not believe for 1 second that men can be women or women can be men. They go along with it. They go along with the game. They go along with the charade. They go along with their protests because they know if they pretend to support it, these people will vote for them. So now we have some more children who lost their lives to somebody who is severely mentally ill. We have adults and more children that are injured because of somebody who is severely mentally ill. And again, it really bothers me that the mainstream liberal media just doesn't come right out and speak the truth. This person was not a woman. I'm sorry. It's true, and yes, it's my opinion, but it's fact. Robert changed his name to Robin. Therefore, we all have to acknowledge that Robert's a woman. Well, no, the Democrat Party does that. Everybody else with the brain the size of a pea knows that that cannot be possible. It's biology, it's science, but you can't tell these politicians anything because, again, they pretend to go along with it when we all know they're full of shit. But this shooting was preventable. How about Robert or Robin's mother? The mother used to work at that school and church. How did the mother not know that this person amassed such an arsenal of weapons, of ammunition? There were drawings, there were writings, there were videos. All of that was found. But the parents don't know anything. That's another problem today, where the parents don't know what their kids are doing. They don't monitor their social media. They don't open the door to their bedroom and see what they're doing in there hour after hour after hour. If a parent would be a parent and check on their children, a lot of these horrific shootings might be prevented. But they don't want to interfere because the person is depressed, or they're sad, or they're being bullied, or they have no friends. Those are signs that there may be a problem, especially if this person is transgender and the parents are going along with it. Now, I've said this a million times, and I'm going to say it again. I don't care what people want to identify themselves as. You could say you are whatever you believe, but we know the real truth. Robin is Robert. Robert had a severe mental illness and amassed an arsenal of weapons to carry out a horrific mass shooting on a Christian school. It was preventable. It should have been prevented, but the parents and the community or whatever else didn't recognize the signs that something was wrong with this person, especially, again, the parents. The parents allowed this person to petition the court to change the name and probably applauded it. And good old Governor Tim Walz in his trans refuge probably applauded it as well. And one more time, I don't blame Tim Walz for this. He couldn't have done anything about it. But I really believe he needs to rethink his politics when it comes to this issue. Because all you're doing is lighting a long fuse that's going to burn and burn and burn. And sooner or later, it's going to explode. And that's exactly what happened in Minnesota with this current tragic event. Enough is enough. I don't want to hear about gun control because it's not the gun. How did the person get the guns? Did the parents help them purchase them? Did they buy them on the street illegally? Who knows? We'll probably never know. But the bottom line here is too many of these horrific shootings are being carried out by transgender individuals because they're not happy with their life one way or another. Republicans, Democrats, any politician, need to put their heads together and figure out how to get these people the right mental health counseling they need, because that is what they need. Whether they believe there's something else is a story for another day. You know the truth, I know the truth, and the mainstream liberal media knows the truth, but you won't hear them talk about it. Just like the two guys in the clip, they're calling this person there. I guess they're a they, them. I don't know. Speak the facts. All they do is lie and cover up for people with mental illnesses. And that shit needs to stop, or we're going to keep seeing these horrific shootings by people similar to Robert Westman.